I love this book. I loved every minute of reading this book. OD for the Accidental Practitioner, a book written by practitioners for practitioners by Larry uh, Kokellenberg and Reagan Miller. And I again, I wanted to share that I'm from ISODC, and I'd like to encourage you, if you haven't checked out ISODC, to check out the organization. There's a lot of wonderful OD scholars, practitioners, and friends who will give you lots of support and development. And we have asked some folks today where they're calling in from. Let's see, we have Delaware, Wisconsin, Chicago, the Pacific Northwest, Michigan. And we'll probably have some more folks coming on as well. But I just really want to welcome you all today. And I want to introduce our speakers. So Dr. Larry is an author, consultant, trainer, scholar, practitioner, and has been researching, designing, developing, and delivering training programs for 40 years. He has personally trained over 200,000 leaders, executives, managers, and supervisory personnel. He has provided successful training or consulting services to over 200 organizations. He has contributed to over 40 training programs during the last 40 years. You've been very busy, Larry. He has authored a pamphlet on adult education and has authored a book on organization development, as well as numerous articles and an audio tape on management. He was named one of the top small business consultants by Independent Business Magazine, and he was on the White House Commission for Employee Engagement. He has a PhD in psychology from Union College in Ohio, an MSW from University of Illinois, and a BA from Benedictine University in Illinois. He also has a very practical side to his research and teaching, having been an entrepreneur for over 20 years and having run several companies. I also would like to welcome Reagan Miller. Reagan is the team lead at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management's Workforce Planning and Reshaping Division within OPM's HR Solutions, providing human capital management services to the public sector clients nationwide. Reagan previously served in the private sector in training and development positions. Across her federal career, she has served in civilian positions within the Department of Army and the Defense Logistics Agency. This is Reagan's second tour with OPM. Reagan has extensive experience in the full scope of operational human resource management within staffing, classification, performance management, and training. She has served in 2 first-line supervisor positions, one of which was overseas. Since 2014, Reagan has worked in an HR consulting role, leading work in workforce and succession planning, organizational design, results-oriented performance culture, and organization development. This led her to partner with federal agencies to improve workforce practices and structures, including the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, and multiple components of the Department of Labor, among others. Reagan has a BS in psychology from Salisbury University and an MS in industrial organizational psychology from the University of Baltimore. Reagan is a certified organization culture inventory and organization effectiveness inventory professional from Human Synergistics. Also, Reagan is a certified professional coach from the College of Executive Coaching. Wow. I'm so excited to hear from you guys today. And more folks are coming on, so I just let them in, and let's see. I am going to turn it over to you now. And while I turn it over to you, could you maybe talk a little bit about why you wrote this wonderful book?
Yes, we'd be happy to. Um, we know this book also introduced the term, right, accidental practitioner. It might not have existed for many folks in the field before we put this book out there, but we wrote this book because we recognized there was a gap in terms of how we learn to, one, understand the knowledge of being an OD practitioner, but then how we become skillful, right? There's so much theory, there's so many books, and there's so many folks out there who can read all of that information that's available. But then what do we do to actually move that forward and feel like we're a skillful practitioner? And that's a challenge, and it was a gap. And the more folks that Larry and I met in the field, including ourselves, came in from a side door, right? And they came in from maybe doing a different career field, right? You hear I'm in human capital, I do talent management, I do training. So many folks have stood up at conferences and said, oh, I'm really, in training and development, or maybe even as far as, oh, I'm an engineer and I just happen to be really good with people. And so the term accidental practitioner emerged from that because most of us maybe didn't set out intentionally to be in this field. And even still, if you did set out intentionally and got your degrees from universities in organizational development, there's still that bridge between how did you get all this knowledge, all the things you know, to moving into being a skillful practitioner. So the whole intent of our book was helping folks think about how to apply the skills as a practitioner, whether you're internal or external to an organization, and really start to feel grounded that you can practice this and you can be really effective partner for your clients, whoever they might be. So,
Reagan,
yeah.
I teach at the college level, and as an icebreaker this week, I asked the question, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were younger? And surprisingly, not one person said, I want to be an OD professional.
I can't imagine why. Most people, when they hear it, go, what is that? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You'll rarely ever hear anybody say, I want to be a leader as well.
that's true.
Yeah. And so, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this book, we hope, helps folks understand sort of the process and the thoughts going behind being a practitioner. You do not have to read it cover to cover. It's designed so you can pick whichever part might be relevant to you and just poke around and learn, or you can read it cover to cover. And we've got lots of thought-provoking questions at the end of each chapter to kind of get you thinking about what can I do with this information? So for today, that leads us to kind of what are we doing today here? And today's focus is on discovery interviews, which if you have the book, we talk specifically about those on page 129, but it does align to some of the core competencies that Larry and I outlined earlier in the book, right around page 28, 29, that the core competencies that we've outlined are ones that we think help create a skillful practitioner, right?
Yep.
So there's all sorts of competency models. We know ODN has one. We know other organizations have created competency models, and they've gone through the rigor of making them scientific. And, we cannot proclaim we did that here, but we wanted to put some thought behind what are those things that differentiate you and really help you feel like you can practice this. And so we have a list of about 6 or 7 in there, and they include things like relationship management, systems thinking, organizational development theory, right? That there's that knowledge piece,
Yeah.
use of self, and situational awareness. So those are some, right? And then we've defined each from what we view as how we would define those. And the one that discovery interviews really align to today is the one where we said assessment and analysis, which is good diagnostic skills and being able to identify root cause and being able to differentiate the symptoms from the systems and from solutions. And so discovery interviews are a tool you can use in that assessment and analysis process to get at those and answer those questions, excuse me. So with that, Larry, I think we're going to dive into our material.
So what is the discovery interview? We thought we'd give you a little bit of a definition first. Okay, so you can read straightforward. It's a mindset and a skill set. And we're most interested in helping you develop the skill today. So all the information, all the theory, all the author notations, that's already in the book. So if you're looking for theoretical stuff, that's a good place to go get it. What we'd like to do is help you develop some skills at doing this today. So, and
I love that.
It's a method of questioning. It's a process to get clarification. Okay. Now it overlaps with some of the other pieces in the literature, such as clear language. That is not as well known, but it's a process to help clients deal with their metaphors and how they're thinking about things. That particular approach is most often used in psychotherapeutic processes. We all know certainly about appreciative inquiry out of Case Western, but that tends to focus just on the positive, whereas the discovery interview could focus on anything the client is focusing on, positive, negative, neutral, whatever. And of course, it also has some overlap with dialogic, with Gervais, Bruchac, and others about dialogic OD. So while there is some overlap and some similarities, it really is a bit different because it really is a skill that the interviewer has in drawing out the specificity that's necessary for recommendation or diagnosis, et cetera. When I worked at the Federal Executive Institute, we would get calls all the time. And people say, hey, do you do, or can you help us with, or whatever it might be. And what we soon discovered is that most of the calls either give us symptoms or solutions. So they would say, we need team building. Well, that's a solution. Or none of our people seem to work well together. Well, that's a symptom. Okay, and we would get that all the time. And when we would ask them, well, what does team building mean to you? Or why do you think you need team building? Or what are some of the reasons causing people not to collaborate? They would have no answers, okay? It's like somebody told them that this is a good program, or you should do this, or your people should do that, and that's what they're asking for. I remember one person when we asked them, why do you want to do this? And they said, well, I don't know. My boss told me to go find somebody who does this. And that was it, right? So they were being dutiful and they were going to find somebody who does that, okay? They had no idea, why they needed it or what it was for. So we realized quickly that most people are not really good at systems analysis, system thinking, and looking for root cause. So this discovery interview helps you get to that root cause very quickly, okay? So I want you to do something with me here, okay? Whether you're on the phone or not. And by the way, since this is a skill development workshop, we really do encourage people to stay on their audio, stay on their video, so that we can work together in small groups, and we're going to be a very small group today, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll modify things as we need to on time as we go along. But you could do this with your eyes open, or you can do this with your eyes closed, okay? So here's what I would love for you to do. Would you please, kind of put things out of your hands, and hopefully you're not multitasking. And I'd like you to picture a very lovely, pretty meadow. Now, is your land flat, or are there hills and valleys in your meadow? Is the wind blowing through the grasses, or is it calm? Are there trees in your meadow? And if so, what kind? Are there any flowers in your meadow? Are there people about in your meadow? How about little critters and animals running about in your meadow? Is it sunny sky with blue, sky and sun shining, or puffy white clouds? Now get a good picture of your meadow. And when you got it, open your eyes and come back to the room. All right, now we all have a picture of a meadow. This was my meadow. Now I'm sure every one of you have the same picture, right?
Nope.
Not, okay, not even close, right? Because we all have a different meadow, okay? Every one of you pictured a different meadow as we went through this. Some of you, maybe that was your meadow. It was just all pretty flowers. For some people, it might have been a mountain meadow. For some people, if you're international, it might have been, Ghana or Africa, or the plains of Africa, or wherever, okay? So we all have this different meadow. The discovery interview is a process for clarifying what people mean. Now, this little demonstration or exercise is analogous to when people say a particular word. We need, now whatever word comes next, they have a picture of what that means to them. We need project management. We need executive coaching. We need, new technology. Our technology is outdated. They have a picture. They have a meadow. Okay. We don't know what that is. We probably have a picture too. Okay. And in all likelihood, it is not the same picture. okay, that it is either slightly different or, greatly different than what they have. I remember having a colleague once when we were working with a client and we were finishing some intervention that included some training. At the end of the training, this person said, I think the next step for them is such and such. And I said, oh, great. I said, why are you recommending such and such? And he said, well, it follows nicely from what we just did. And I said, that's true, but why do you think the client needs that step? And he said, well, it just follows nicely. And I do that program so well. Okay. And I said, well, both are true. It does follow nicely and you probably do the program well, but why does the client need that now? Or is there some other intervention, some other training, some other activity that the client should be doing next that would be more in order? And the person said, well, I don't know that. I just know what I do well, which is really interesting. So that gets us to the question of, when we make recommendations to clients, are we recommending what we know and do best, or are we recommending what's best for the client? Okay, so this is a process to help us uncover that meadow and possibly root cause. Okay, so let me give you, let's take a look at Reagan and I, for you, we'll give you an example. Okay, just to give you an example. And then we'd like you guys to do some practice work as well in this, okay? So if I was doing, and by the way, this works very well in the diagnostic interview, but, or in that phase of the OD intervention process, but you could use this at home with your significant other, with a friend, a neighbor, you could use it anywhere, okay? Because it's really a process for clarification. So if we were hired or engaged to go into a client and we were trying to find out about the culture or the current situation or people's opinions, etc., we might start out with something like this. Well, hi, Reagan. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. We appreciate you taking time out from your work. All this information is confidential. We don't have any names attached to anything. Do you mind if I take a few notes? You certainly can have the notes at the end. I just jot down some words that things that I want to maybe come back to later on. Would that be okay with you?
That's fine.
Great. Okay. Tell me, what's it like to work here?
Well, some days it's quite nice, and others, though, are a real challenge.
Now let's stop right there. Okay. You have a lot of information. Okay. For instance, well, that was a drawn out well. We might say something like, well, that well was kind of drawn out. Can you tell me a bit more about what that word means to you? Or what's behind that word? Okay. Or, that well was spoken kind of softly. What's behind that? Okay. Some days, is that all the days? Is that 10% of the days, 20%, 30%? What percent of the days are nice? What percent are a real challenge? Okay. Quite nice. What does that mean? Okay. What does nice mean? What's your meadow look like when it's nice? Okay. Real challenge. Other days are a real challenge. Okay. What does that mean? How many days are a real challenge? What behaviors contribute to being a real challenge? Okay. Every statement they make gives you an opportunity for clarification to make sure you understand what their meadow looks like. Okay. So let us do example 2. And now you get to do a little work on this. Okay. So I say, okay, Reagan, what's it like to work here?
My boss is great, but the organization is a real mess.
Okay. When you say a real mess, tell me a little bit about real mess. What causes it to be a real mess?
Well, the organization is dysfunctional, no communications. There's a lot of unresolved conflicts and silos and outdated technology. There's old, dirty buildings. There's daily crisis management, poor customer service, and there's hostile or incompetent employees.
Wow. Now, what are the areas you could explore in just that statement?
There's a million areas. Could you say a little bit more about the hostile and incompetent employees?
So you would pick hostile and incompetent points, the last statement.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What else would you pick? Same thing or something different?
I'd stick with the employees because, again, a lot of the things she said went toward the environment and the employees.
Okay.
And the other thing that oh, go ahead.
So, sorry, Kimberly. So I think I also would like to understand what does she like about the manager. She said just one thing that is positive, right? I mean, the boss is okay, but the organization is a mess. So maybe what is the dynamic with the manager? Maybe would like to explore that and then move to understand what is not going well.
So good pickup. You could explore
Wonderful.
the positive side of that.
Yeah.
When you say the boss is really great, what do you mean by that? Or there were so many things on the negative side. Okay. Those were all the things she said. Okay.
Right,
So yeah, you right now have about 2 hours worth of questioning in that very first
Yeah.
question. There were many times we would go to a diagnosis and we would have a list of maybe 10 questions that the organization would like to know about. And we never got past the first or second question because so much data came out. Now, this is what's unique about this process. You follow the client's thinking. So you follow them. They kind of lead the process. Look at all I've got right here that I could talk about, okay? Because if I have a list of prescribed questions, then I'm watching my watch, I'm looking at my questions, and I'm trying to make sure I get them all in because we want information about all 10 of those questions. Years
Larry?
ago, yes.
Larry, Laura has a question. What's most important for me to know first?
Ah,
Well,
okay.
that would be the question I would ask, is what's most important for me to know about first, to hear what the client has to say.
Perfect. So you could reflect back. These are all the things you said. What's most important that we talk about? It's kind of the coaching kind of approach. Like, what's the number one thing you want to work on? What's most important? Okay.
That's great.
So good pickup. Okay. You could also focus on anything where there might be either physical or psychological safety issues that you can say, okay, let's focus on that a little bit. Because if you're telling me there's safety issues here, we need to address that fairly quickly. And again, you could go where the client went. Years ago, when I was traveling a great deal and I would rent cars at least once a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And I would always rent from the same company. And they had this customer service drive. And they would always say, how's our customer service? And they would ask you that 3 and 4 times before you even got into your car. And then they would ask you that 2 and 3 times once you brought the car back. And I would always have to tell them, your customer service is great, because it was. But they never knew that I had a bad rental experience. I had several bad cars that were dirty, cars that didn't function totally, but they never knew that because they only asked one question: how was our customer service? If they would have had a broader question like, how was your car rental experience? Or did you have any issues at all? They would have gotten a different answer and been more informed. So even if you're asking, if you're asking all the wrong questions or not open-ended questions, you could get correct answers, but they still could be wrong for you. This process allows you to follow their thinking. So we don't have a prescribed set of questions. Now, I might have 10 questions that the organization wants us to ask, and I have those in reserve, so that if we run up against a dead spot in the interview process, then you can always go back to your list of questions. Okay.
Larry, what was the question you asked again?
The initial question was, what's it like to work here?
Okay.
Okay. So again, we try to ask it open-ended questions so that they can just talk. And I'll give you a few of those, coming on down. Okay.
Awesome.
So here's what we'd like to do. Okay. Just so you guys get a little practice at this. Okay. Oh, there's my medal for this example. Okay. Yeah. Medal. Yeah. Yeah.
Larry, let me add one thing before we
Please.
switch to practice. The other thing is, you can see there's a lot of different ways to go. That doesn't mean there's a right or wrong direction to take this, right? But you go down one path and you get as far as you can with it. And then you can come back to any one of these. If, often, right, if you ask for, tell me about the unresolved conflict, you might hear about the hostile employees, the crisis management, all that as part of it, but you may not. And so if you need more information, you've still got this list, you can go back and then kind of start the whole process again about a different concept. So it's kind of Larry always used this ism, right? It's start somewhere, go anywhere. I mean, that's where you can do with this. And you don't feel like you can exhaust all these before you decide, do I have enough information?
When I just saw our typo there, it's poo customer service. not customer service.
I was trying very hard not to laugh when I
Yeah,
noticed
yeah,
that.
yeah. So sorry for the typo. Early morning issue. Okay.
Well, I thought maybe that was what you wanted, right?
Yeah. Poo customer service. Yeah. So, all right. Well, so you get the sense of what it is. It's getting clarification on almost anything they want to talk about, and then see where that takes you. It could take you, you will learn more about the organization, about its leadership, about the culture, the operations, by just following people's lines of thinking and having them continue to talk about whatever the issues are, than you will by having a prescribed set of questions. So you really uncover a great deal about the organization. Okay. So, and again, get clarity at home at the dinner table. I'm getting frustrated at this. Well, what is this? How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how frustrated I mean, you could do anything. Okay. You can develop it and work with it. All right. So here's some great open-ended questions. Just following Kimberly, what you were just talking about. What's it like to work here? What issues is your organization or team, facing right now? If you were president, what would you change? Tell me about ABC Corporation. Okay. What would it take to make your organization one of the Fortune 500 best companies to work for? Whatever. Okay. And there's plenty of open-ended questions. Develop your own list of open-ended questions that invite people to just start talking about their experience in the organization. Okay. So you could ask any of these. So Kim, how many people do we have online now? Yeah. Why don't we do one group?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's what we'd like you to do, please. Just get a little practice at this. We'd like, if you're willing to do the following, we'd like one of you to just be yourself and be the talker. Another person to be the interviewer. And you get some practice at doing what we just talked about, getting clarity around the meadow. Okay. And then 1 or 2 people be the observers. What else would you have asked about? What did you like about what the person did? What suggestions do you have for improvement? And we'd like you to do about 5 minutes total. So that's 2 to 3 minutes only of talking and questioning, and then 1 or 2 minutes of feedback. And then we'd like you to flip roles. So maybe everybody gets a chance to be the talker. Everyone gets a chance to be the interviewer, and then also the observer. And let's see if we can't get 3 rounds in say 15 to maybe 20 minutes. And then we'll bring you all back. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we don't need a
Or could we just do it in this room, Larry?
Yeah, you can do it
Yeah.
in this room. We
Yeah.
really don't need a breakout room.
Yeah.
And then, Reagan and I will just kind of listen in. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So who wants to be the talker first? That's just being yourself.
Lionel.
Just talk about your organization.
Okay, I can do that.
Great. And who wants to go next in interviewing?
I can do that.
Thank you. And then the others, please, listen in, watch, and observe and see what you get. Okay. So the 2 of you start and the rest observe, and then Reagan and I will just kind of keep quiet.
So, Lionel, tell me, what's it like to work here?
Oh, some days it can be pretty hectic, but most of the time it seems to be quiet and people just follow what they're told to do.
Can you say a little bit more about that people just do what they're told? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure, we tend to have some smart people, but I think a lot of the times, rather than raising the innovative question, they do what they're told to do, because you seem to be allowed to do more if you do as you're told to do. It's when you deviate from that it seems to cause friction.
Mm. And when you say it can be pretty hectic, is that related to when people deviate?
Yes, I'd say most of the time that would be a situation where you're told to stick to the process and not make any changes or suggest any changes. But if you stick to the process, we can get to the result sooner than later.
Stay in your lane, right?
Yes.
All right. And can you elaborate a little bit more about quiet when you said that?
Yeah. Quiet would be to just do the work, do as you're told. They have a low tolerance for conversation about other ways to do things. They want you to get in, understand the processes and procedures, and do it.
Thank you. I can't think of anything else to ask. Oh. Is
All
there
right,
anything
so
else you would like to share, Lionel, that I should know about?
So I feel good that we're having this conversation. And I wish we had more conversations like this. I believe it gives me an opportunity to add value to what we do. And it seems like I'm closed down whenever I start to have these type of conversations, which I think are innovative.
Thank you.
so there's a number of words, okay, like friction, deviate, even in his Lionel's last statement, close down. Reagan, did you pick up some other words?
Yeah, well, she got the couple right. Quiet, right, is kind of go along to get along was what I was picking up on. And then the innovation piece was another one, right? We're not innovative. That was another one I heard.
So yeah, so there are lots of words that you could continue to explore. Okay. And I tell clients things. I'm going to just take a few notes with me now so I can back to them. And again, you can, if you want, or we'll tear them up at the end, throw them away. It's just reminders for me because I can't keep it all in my head. That kind of stuff.
Oh no, we lost Larry.
Oh, it's like, oh,
He'll come back.
Yeah.
there you go. There he is.
You got to unmute yourself again, Larry.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Everybody just went away. Okay. All right. Lionel, you want to take a run at it?
Sure.
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Yeah. We're here to practice. We're among friends. Go ahead. Go for it.
So Kimberly, tell me, what would it take to make this the best organization possible?
To get new leadership. Yeah, I think we need to start from scratch.
When you say new leadership, what's driving you to say that? What are some of the things you like to see different?
I feel that leadership is fair, and I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here. I feel that leadership is they just don't care about what the employees want to share, the input that the employees want to give. I mean, I feel like it's a very top-down method of leadership, and I just feel like it shouldn't be that way anymore. We're in the 21st century.
Okay. So if you were one of the leaders, you said get new leaders, what would you do differently?
I would do a listening interview is what I would do if I was a leader, and I would get feedback from the employees, get their ideas. I believe that employees, they just want to be heard, and they just want to feel like their input is welcomed and appreciated. I think that everyone realizes that every suggestions that's made can't be implemented, right? But I think they would want the ideas and suggestions that make sense for the organization to be implemented, and they would feel really good about that. And the other thing I feel like is, we do need, our buildings are kind of old and depressing. And, I do feel like we kind of need a little facelift, if you will, in our building. And I think that could be a really big factor in employee morale, and bringing up employee morale. And so, yeah, that would, but I'm sure that would come out in doing the listening interviews.
Okay, so listening interview would be a way to start.
Mhm.
And then we'd look at some other ways to get input from the employees.
Yeah, because, we have some really smart employees that work here. And I just feel like, especially those on the front line, they're always having ideas, right? They're always having ideas on how things can be done better, but it just, they might share it with their supervisors, but it just doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
And that's maybe one of the reasons we have the high turnover that we do have, because people just don't feel valued, and they get frustrated eventually.
All right, Kimberly, thank you.
Wow, good job. Okay. Think about this. We started out by saying new leadership, start from scratch, don't care, top down, and then personal belief about it shouldn't be that way. And then we went on to a solution. We need listening interviews, and then we had some other things in there, and then we came back to the buildings and employee morale, which all that stuff would come out in the listening interview. And employees have ideas frontline, but they're not listened to. Those ideas go nowhere. And then came another bombshell. Oh, by the way, we have high turnover. Nobody's left. Okay, so I mean, there's so many areas you could explore on this. Okay.
And the other thing I think Lionel did so well is when there was a pause, he was quiet.
It's okay.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Silence is your friend.
He allowed me to, kind of explore my thoughts even further, because, I think sometimes people are uncomfortable with silence. And so I think that was a really good thing that he did.
So good job. Good job. So let me show you one other thing we could have explored too. For instance, you could have taken any one of those. Okay, your leadership doesn't seem to care, and you seem to believe it's top down. Now you could explore that whole issue. Are all the leaders top down? How heavy is the bureaucracy? Is it a command and control structure? Are some leaders better than others? What's causing the leaders to have this top-down approach? What in the system has influenced the culture to be that way? You think it's just the personalities of those people in senior management positions, or are there some systems pressures on some of these managers to be that way? Because maybe there's a production goal, a profit goal, a quarterly profit, a SEC commission, stock goal. What's causing these managers to be that way? In today's age, when most people know that's probably not the best system for human resource management. Yeah. Okay. Something in that system is causing those people to be that way. So again, that whole area about management, high turnover, that's a symptom. You could explore that. What in the system is causing people to quit? Okay. You got to believe that senior management knows a lot of this, if not all of it. Why haven't they fixed it? Okay. I mean, what's the cost of turnover? Has anyone figured out the cost of turnover? Okay. I mean, again, there's so many areas you could explore in this. So, now here's an example. Okay. Kim is very talkative. And so, while you can get a lot from that, some respondents are that way. you know, and you can't write fast enough to write down every issue, you know, and other people, you know, maybe it's a trust issue, maybe it's, they're relatively new and hired and they don't have that history and they just don't know. So other people, it's like, yeah, you know, like, why do you say you have top-down management? Oh, because we do. You know, and it goes nowhere, it falls flat. That's why you have your list of questions to fall back on, okay? Thoughts, Reagan?
Yeah, you know, going back to the initial statement, right? We need new leadership. That's one where my instinct would be, is it all leaders? Is it senior leaders? Is it first line leaders? Is it, you know, what do leaders not leave, right? You're saying you got turnover later in this. Do your leaders stay? Sometimes I like to get like a percentage or give me a number out of how many. It just kind of gives you that metric of sort of where we are on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And that measure alone can help folks zero in on their thoughts. So getting that sort of more targeted in there, and because leadership is so broad, right? What is leadership? Do you mean formal leaders, informal leaders? Are you talking about the people on the board? You know, all of those things could factor into this. And the other thing I caught my ears perked up to was, we're in the 21st century. And to me, because that's a very broad statement, and that's like a meadow, right? What is
Right.
21st century to you? And I thought I'd want to explore that a bit more, because that could really drive why you think there are the symptoms there are, and the recommendations you're making too, right? Like leader sensing interviews and things like that. So, you know, right off from the get-go, there were many paths you could go. And because the intertwining, right? If you were taking those lists, when you exhausted one, you could go back to another one as well.
That is wonderful. So I'm trying to play the devil's advocate throughout this whole thing. So if I was an insecure leader, I would probably give you my 10 best employees for you to question, right? Because you know, maybe the picture would be a little rosier. So how do you pick who you interview? And I mean, do you pick it at random? Is there like a certain number of employees that you and Laura, I just really want to be where you're at because it's really beautiful outside. Oh,
Sorry about that. I'm running behind and I didn't want to not dial in, but
oh,
I had some shopping to do. So
oh. Where are you?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And I want to say I bought the book, and so far I love it. Well done.
Awesome.
And I went to I have my MSLOD, so I think it's a great book.
Thank you.
Good, excellent. Well, to answer your question, Kim, it depends on the size of the organization and what
Okay.
we're contracted to do. However, that being said, if there's a small number of senior management, meaning probably 12 or less senior people, we'll interview them all, okay? Because our belief is that unless 80% of the senior leaders are actually involved in whatever change initiative they're really going to do, it won't be sustainable over the long term. Okay,
so you would focus on senior management for the interviews.
That's just one piece of it. Then
Okay.
we would take a percentage of the mid-level managers, and then and probably, and depending on the size of the organization, we might go as high as 25%. But if you're talking about 300 mid-level managers, no, then it might be 5 or 10%, and then we'll take a percentage of the employees as well. But the employees could be done either in a simple question, 2 or 3 question written survey, or focus group. Okay, so we try to get all levels of the organization. If it's a big organization, then it's smaller, or we'll take a division or a team and then work within that group. Okay, so you usually try to get all the senior managers, and because you want to know where they're at, because I've never been anywhere in any of those 200 organizations where senior management wasn't part of the problem. Now, I don't say that to be negative or pejorative, but they're always part of the problem. And if nothing else, they've tolerated or endured the situation for years. and that's their contribution. But the other side of the coin is I've never been anywhere where senior management wasn't part of the solution either. So they've
Right.
got to be involved. So you want to start building your relationship with the senior people right away, building that trust component, seeing where they're at and whether they're operating as a cohesive unit or they're dysfunctional and they're in their silos or they have surface harmony. That's a pretty critical piece. There are times where we've been called to work with people and we never got past the senior leadership team for an entire year. Okay, just working with them because they needed the work before we moved on to the next level. Okay, so, but again, size and goal, you know, what we were contracted to do, et cetera.
And how do you present this information?
It's all the data is collected, collated, assessed, written up. Okay, we like to put direct quotes in there. Like one person said, if it wasn't for the poor morale, there wouldn't be any at all. You know, so those kind of quotes stand out, you know, but we put no authorship. I mean, so things like that really kind of are stark and make you say, wow, we got employees saying that, you know, and so, but we never put authorship. We take away all the curse words and swear words, and that it's a written format. So we write up a pretty extensive report. When we were in the government, protocol is that we give it to the senior exec first, and she or he determines how far out it goes. Our encouragement is you're transparent and let the whole report go to as many people as you feel it's important. Now, sometimes it's confidentiality issues or some other issues that that just needs to go to just this group of people. Okay.
Right.
So, you know, depending on what comes up. Okay. And the reason you write up the report, you don't just hand them a report like Beloit or Booz Allen. You give them the report, they read it, they go through it, they ask questions, and you immediately move into the action planning phase. What are you going to do about this data? Okay, so yeah, we always would build into our diagnosis several days of time to come back and help them process the data. Okay, so yeah, you move right away to the next phase.
That was very helpful. And you know, we have some professors that make their classes watch our videos, and I could see that this would be one.
Well, hope they do.
Yeah, you know, because I think it's a really listening and recording and this fact-finding mission. I think it's a skill that needs to be developed.
Yeah. So,
and it's constantly in refinement because especially when you're new to this, you're going to feel clunky. You're going to feel like I didn't go that path that I could have, or you're going to have longer pauses or, you know, not be sure how to frame a question. So the more you do it, the more you're going to get into the rhythm of what are some of your go-to questions. You know, you'll have some that, you know, just really work to pull out a response. And then it's just more comfortable because it feels more conversational. And that's part of getting to that skillfulness of a practitioner, is feeling like, when am I kind of in my groove that I can trust myself to do this and it's what it should be. And that's where the more you do things like this, the more you get that settled feeling.
And do you find that the action planning is pretty intuitive after they review the data? Or sometimes do you have to coach them into what the action planning should be?
I find that you got a couple of issues that seem to affect it. One is budget. How much money do they have to, you know, because they originally called you because the door was open. They didn't realize the whole wall was collapsing, right? So, yeah, you know, and so so that controls it sometimes. Very few organizations would ever say to us, come in and change our complete culture. Okay. They always say, you know, we need training or we need conflict resolution, or it's some small initiative. So it's the foot in the door concept. You start anywhere, but you go everywhere. So you might say, well, look, we did phase one. Phase one is really the assessment, and you now have the assessment. So now you pick and choose, what do you think the most important things are for phase two? Phase two is you address some of these issues. It's unlikely you'll address them all. And as a matter of fact, you probably don't need to address them all, because if you address some of the more serious ones, some of the more minor ones get taken care of in that process, or they go away because you got other major ones that are more important.
Right.
You know, so, but you just help them take the next step, which usually is a smaller step than the complete report would outline. Okay, but then they take that step and that's phase 2, and then they may go on to phase 3. Okay, you know, once they start seeing good results coming from this and people are supportive of it, because you have a lot of skeptics, and the skeptics are great. I mean, they're an important part of the process, just like the optimists are great. It's the cynics that I'm worried about. Okay, because they're destructive. They hope it'll fail and either consciously or unconsciously work to prove that.
Right.
Yeah. So, so yeah, you take it in pieces and chunks that are affordable with all their resources, including people and time and space and whatever else needs to be done.
And it's, you know, to the point of talking about, you know, the org design aspects, you know, which we talk about in the book. Sometimes it is, you just have your system reinforcing some of the siloing or some of the bad behaviors because there's competition built into your performance plans that really just, it fuels it rather than helps, you know, correct the organization. So sometimes it is building in the capacity to change those reinforcers while you're also looking at how do we change the relationships, the behaviors, and the norms. Because if we're working on one without the other, you know, you're probably going to have some more challenges because you're still saying, if you're saying, I want everyone to collaborate, but their performance standards still say, no, you need to make this sales and revenue target, and this team needs to make this one, and this one needs to make this one, then you're not reinforcing that collaboration is healthy for the organization.
And I read an article recently that 86% of HR managers feel that they need to work on their org design in some capacity.
Mhm, mhm.
So, you know, I mean, I think that that would be a huge step for a lot of people just in correcting some of the issues.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, if you have a job design where folks are not clear on what their expectations are, or it overlaps in several different parts of the organization and no one knows where they fit in a process, it's just going to drive those poor relationship behaviors because you're just fighting for your valid
Right,
spot, right?
right. And, you know, I loved your whole book. I love the little cases that you have throughout the book, the little mini cases, if you will. I just think they're very thought-provoking. Could you say a little bit about your wisdom bits at the end? What gave you that idea to is it 101 wisdom bits that you put at the end? Oh, 100, 100.
100, yeah. That was Larry's brainchild. I can say from working with Larry for years, he always has these great little thought-provoking one-liners, and this was just a way to formalize it and keep building them. And you know, it's just helpful to kind of, some of them I've over the years felt are just sort of comforting, right? See,
Right.
you know, and one that I know I came up with, well, if you made a decision, it didn't work, make a new decision, right? It's
Yeah.
that it just reinforces, right, that it's a constant change. And if you have those thoughts in your head, sometimes it's just an easy way to communicate a complex subject in a very absorbable, simple way that someone can say, I get it.
So these are Larry and Reaganisms, right?
Yeah.
I love number 100. You never learn anything while talking.
I just told that to this group of 7th graders I remember working with. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the teachers were going, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
well, thank you so much. I thought that was a really, really beneficial exercise. Lionel, do you have anything to say or share?
So the key thing I wanted to make sure that I said was the fact that I like the book brings a core together, right? Because you do have different practitioners
Mhm.
out there with varied background. And I like the key points you make salient because again, you don't find a lot of people like myself. You know, I practiced it for 20 years. I was in human resources, and then I go get a PhD. And so now I understand the theory side, and I understand what my issue was before when you're in the business. Okay, make a profit, losing money. Well, after you become an academic, you want to overlay some theory, It's not that I don't want to make the money, but I want to optimize the opportunity. And I think the book optimize what it means to be a practitioner so that anybody understands they can come in, but here's some key salient things to do. And I just think you did an awesome job with that. I wish that I would have had this when I started the doctor program, because it would again help me start to frame what it means to be a practitioner. You know, they told us you'd be a scholar practitioner, but what does that mean? And now it gives, when I meet a lot of people, because most of the people I meet are practitioners, not necessarily from the OD background. And so you have to do this leveling first. I'll go through this leveling frame, but I think you gave me some salient points to use so that we can move through the path. It's all about understanding where the points to move. And I think you did an excellent job. Again, I like the exercise we went through today, because again, I think the first thing when you go in to meet with a client is understanding what their expectations are, right? And then I like it because you look at the senior leader, middle leadership in the organization. I've worked with a lot of mid-sized organizations. And again, communication is different at all three levels. And what we mean when we say this, I think is where I help them most of the time. Leading HR was using my OD skill set to help bringing a communication and or a project plan. And most of the time you don't have that because the views are different. They are different, right? If I'm leading in the type of leader versus the middle leaders, which they tend to try to find people that will just execute. But in doing that, you find some people that are creative and they don't get to talk, right? So I just want to commend you on making that. Now, if we can get people to understand the international international OD organization as to start moving towards some parameters, like with SHRM just started out as an organization, but today by default it governs a lot of the nuances for HR, and I love it. You know, if I don't know an answer, that's why I go first, and others do that, right? But they stepped into, and I think there's an opportunity for us to look at how do we step into this OD piece, right? But thank you.